So we're lucky to have Jamie Clare here. We're always excited to see her face. Tammy's missed today, but Jamie's doing a good job keeping us going. Okay, so good morning. Today we are diving into 401ks because it's 2020. It's going to be 2026, and nothing says we run smart businesses like giving your team a retirement plan that doesn't keep you up at night. Lucky for us, we've brought in an expert who makes fiduciary duty sound almost fun. Dan Hofmann, 27 years in retirement plan world, a master of sales, service, and plan consulting. Dan's a University of Minnesota economics grad who's dedicated his career to helping businesses build retirement plans that are compliant, cost effective, and easy to manage. When he's not doing that, he's riding his motorcycle, playing softball, or buried in a good book under the Phoenix sun, which sounds terrible, but maybe awesome in the winter. Together, they're here. He's here to set up 2026 401k simple, strategic, and maybe even enjoyable. Let's give a big welcome to Dan.
Thanks, Jason. I really, really appreciate that. So just a real brief, I mean, it sounds like Jason gave you a little bit of a background, or a little bit of an idea of my background, but just to give you a little bit more detail. So as he mentioned, I work with an organization called Assure. Assure is a human capital management or HCM firm. If you're familiar with human capital management, that's a type of an organization that deals with HR, payroll and tax, time and attendance, talent management, and in our case here at Assure, retirement. As I mentioned, I have been, as Jason mentioned, I've been in the business over 27 years, so that gives you an idea how old I am. I've worked in all phases of the retirement plan space. So whether that is working as an advisor or whether that is working as a liaison to business owners or whether that's doing consulting on plan design, things like that. I've done pretty much all of that. One of the things that you guys will be glad to know is I am available if you do have questions with respect to either setting up a new plan or if you have an existing plan. I can kind of do some troubleshooting and kind of analysis or benchmarking to make sure that what you have is what would be the best fit for you. What I wanted to do today is to talk a little bit about just 2026. Let's go back here and let me share my screen. Second. There we go. Okay. Let's see, did this work? No, let's do this share. Okay. I don't work with Zoom as much, so it's
Oops. We can
okay.
see, so you're good.
Okay, perfect. All right. Um, what I wanted to do is to kind of run through just the benefit of having a 401k. Now, I'm going to kind of start from the beginning. So, if some of you have had 401ks or are familiar with them, I apologize. I'm probably going to be repeating something that you maybe already know, but for you folks that maybe don't have a plan, I want to kind of go through some of the basics of what a 401k plan actually is. Um, you know, this little screen I think is considered is supposed to be kind of a joke. It is, I guess, a joke, but it is something that people are running into. I mean, one of the big concerns that people have nowadays is, what's good, how am I going to be able to retire? Am I going to be able to retire? You're seeing more and more folks that are delaying retirement or working past retirement age, because they have to. It's not necessarily a bad thing to be working past retirement age, but it's something that you want to be as a choice, as opposed to something that you have to do. Um, frankly, we are in a very much of a retirement savings crisis. Right now, we've got maybe 1 in 5 over age 50 that have absolutely no retirement savings currently. We've got a Social Security system that's expected to be insolvent in about 10 years or 9 years now, since we're getting up to 2026. Um, and only 53% of Americans actually have a retirement account. So you're dealing with a lot of folks that, very shortly are going to be kind of unprepared to actually leave the job market and retire. And you're running with the Social Security system, and just as an aside, I don't think Social Security is necessarily going away, but it is a situation where more than likely they'll probably be cutting benefits. They're going to be raising the age where you can access your benefits and things like that. So that's something that's going to be changing here in the next year. The other big thing, and I've always been a big proponent of trying to make sure people have an understanding of finance. That last bullet, financial literacy, that's something that, if you think about it, we teach a lot of things in school. We teach math, we teach science, we teach English, grammar, things like that. I don't know how many people that are in the audience that have run into this, but I've never had a basic course on financial, literacy. And it's just something that we don't teach. And the problem is that with the way our system is structured, it falls on the individual to make their own decisions. And for most of these people, they just don't have the background to be able to make intelligent decisions. Um, so going into a 401k. So what is a 401k? Now I'm going to say a program that works because if you structure it properly, it can more than provide for yourself and your employees to have a successful retirement. But basically, a 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement plan that allows your employees to put defer some of their paycheck into a tax-deferred account. Okay. Now, employers have the option, you don't have to, but you have the option to contribute to the employee's account if you want to. Most commonly that you see is like a match. If you've had a 401k before, a lot of times what an employer will do, they'll match a certain percentage, and there's a formula that you kind of decide on. But once again, that's something that's not required. But what happens with those dollars is they're deposited into an account at home that has kind of a menu of mutual funds. And the employees sometimes will actually choose what funds that are used. There are some kind of do it for me, I call it, investments as well that they can just kind of set it and forget it. But bottom line, there's a group of investments, typically mutual funds, that employees can actually access to have their dollars grow. So going back, so why do businesses start 401ks? What's the motivation for a business owner to start 401ks? Well, I think one of the biggest ones, and this is something that is very much a real thing. I mean, you folks are probably struggling. I'm assuming trying to find qualified people to come work with you, and then when you find a qualified person, you want to make sure that you're able to retain them. For the this is information that we have from our HR files and our payroll systems and things like that at Assure. But basically, what you're looking at is you got about 88% of employees that are out there looking for jobs. They consider a 401k a must-have benefit, and that's a very real thing. And I'll give you an example. My wife, well, while it wasn't the only reason, one of the reasons she left her previous job is because they didn't offer a 401k. And so, because of that, she asked them to set it up. They never did. And like I said, it wasn't the only reason, but it was a contributing reason for her to go to another company. So it's something that, it is something that is a very real thing. The other thing is that 94% of employers who offer 401k, it helps them actually recruit and retain good employees. The other reason why you might see a business start a 401k is that they want to make sure that their employees are taken care of, and more than 70% of them say financial wellness programs are really important. Generating that employee goodwill. One of the big motivators, and don't discount this, is as an owner of a business, it is a tremendous tax shelter for you. You can put a lot of money into a 401k, and the advantage here is if you're doing it on a pre-tax basis, that's an above the line tax deduction for you as the business owner. So we'll get into that a little bit more in detail here in a slide or two, but just FYI, I mean, there's very much an advantage for you as a business owner to actually set up a 401k if you don't have one set up, or if you have one, maximizing the contributions that you can make. Lastly, it's required in many states. Now, this is not the case in Texas currently, but you've got about a third of the states in the country that have some type of retirement plan mandate. So they have to offer something to their employees. As I mentioned, that's about a third of the country. I think you're going to see that continue to grow because the ones that don't have mandate in place. Every single one, with the exception of South Dakota, has legislation that has been introduced to set up a mandate. And, the idea behind that, if you think about this, is, once again, I think there's going to be some pressure, I think, from the federal government to have something in place because if you're looking, once again, if you're looking from 10 years down the road and you've got a social security system that's under pressure and you've got people that don't have any retirement savings, it's the government that's going to have to really take care of these people. So bottom line, I would expect, I'm not an expert on when they're going to do this or whatever, but I would not be surprised to see more states actually enact these retirement plan mandates. Okay. So types of 401ks. So one thing I should mention, a 401k is a 401k, but what you do with that 401k, you have some options. The traditional type of 401k, which is the one that, really has been since the beginning, is a type of a program that has pre-tax contributions. So you're deferring taxes so if you're making, let's just say, $50,000 a year and you're putting $10,000 into a 401k, your W-2 at the end of the year will say 40,000 because you're deferring 10 of that for a later point in time. Now, they're still going to get taxed. The government's going to get their money, right? So, but when it's taxed, the growth of that during that period of time that the money is in the 401k, it grows tax deferred, right? There's tax-free growth in the 401k. That's one of the big advantages of the 401k. You don't have to pay taxes on it every single year. But once again, the government's going to get their money. So when you take that out finally, when you retire and start taking dollars out, then you're taxed. And generally the tax is that you're taxed at your regular income rate. This is a little bit newer feature in the 401k world, but what is called a Roth 401k. If you're familiar with a Roth IRA, it's similar in the sense that in a 401k, you're making after-tax contributions. So going back to that example of somebody making $50,000, they put $10,000 into the 401k, but they're getting taxed on that. Their W-2 is still going to say $10,000. Now, just like the traditional 401k, those dollars grow tax-free in the account in the time that it's there. The advantage of the Roth is that when you take those dollars out, you are not taxed on the withdrawal since you've already paid your taxes on it. So you're not taxed when you withdraw that money. Now, the way most 401ks are set up, Roth is a provision that you have to add. But in our case, basically we just put it in there. You can do both. You can do a combination of traditional and 401k. You can do some in traditional, some in Roth. You can do all traditional, all Roth. It's very flexible from that perspective. Okay, so how much can you invest? This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. For deferrals, an individual for 20. This should say 2026. I just noticed that I've updated this presentation a couple of times. So for 2026, you're going to have an ability for deferrals to go up to 24,500. So that's a deferral from an individual's paycheck. Now, if you're age 50 or over, you have what's called a catch-up contribution. So that's $8,000. So if you look at 24 plus 8,000, so if you do the math on that, that is, sorry, I should have done this before the meeting. 24 plus 8,000. So that's 32,500 if you're age 50 or older. So that would be the max that you can defer if you're 50 or older. Now that said, for those individuals aged 60 to 63, and don't ask me why they did this little band here. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed this to age 60 and above. But at this point in time, it's 60 to 63. You have, instead of the 8,000, you can put in 11,250. I call it a super catch-up. So in that scenario, you're able to put in over $35,000 into a 401k. That's deferral from your paycheck or that W-2 income that you take. Now, in addition to that, once again, this is optional, but you can put in employer dollars as well. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can do that through a match, or you can do that through what is called a profit sharing contribution. The profit sharing contribution is sort of mislabeled because you don't have to have a profit to have a profit sharing contribution. But those are the two different types. You can actually do both if you wanted to. But this is the maximum deferral that you can put into a 401k plan. For an individual account, it's going to be $72,000. $80,000 if you're 50 or over, that includes the catch up. And if you've got somebody that's doing a super catch up, their maximum contribution, including deferral and company dollars, would be 83,250. Okay. Um, hang on. I'm going to get into, I mean, I'm not going to get into, I'll get into this a little bit more in depth later, but this annual maximum that we're talking about, um, obviously not every single person is going to be able to do the maximum. But if you're structured from a business perspective to where you want to do the maximum, we can structure that, and it's not something that you have to give everybody the same amount equally. So we can talk about that here in a couple of minutes, but or I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But just FYI, keep these maximum numbers in mind because as business owners, this is something that you may want to do if we're talking about tax sheltering and things like that. Oh, and let me mention one other thing since I mentioned tax sheltering. That 72,000 or that 80,000 or that 83,250, that's an above the line tax deduction for you as a business owner. So for example, if you're making $200,000 a year and you put $70,000 into a 401k plan, right? That includes deferral and company money. And obviously you're the business owner. Your AGI goes from 200 to 130,000, just like that. And that's before any other tax deductions. So when we're talking about, the ability to shelter, one of the things that I think a lot of people are not necessarily aware of is that this particular vehicle is one of the best tax shelters that you're going to have. Okay. So how should I invest? There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can do it myself. I call these people tinkerers. Basically, as we mentioned before, a 401k will have a kind of a listing of funds that are in there, and you can kind of, make your determination whether you're conservative, moderate, aggressive, and then you pick the different funds that are in different categories: large cap, small cap, international, bonds. There's all these different types of individual funds that you can pick from. You basically pick that allocation that you feel comfortable with. Let's just say on moderate, you build an allocation of the individual funds, and based on the funds that are in the plan, and then you monitor it on a regular basis. I would say maybe once a year you check and just rebalance. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, if you're supposed to be 50-50 stocks and bonds, and after a year the stocks do really well and you got 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Well, you want to reallocate that a little bit because you're a little over, since you're moderate, you're a little more aggressive than you want to be. So you want to sell some stocks, buy some bonds, and then get your allocation back to 50-50. So that's something that you do periodically. Like I said, for most people, it's probably good just to look at it once a year. If you're a little more of a tinkerer, I mean, you can look at it whatever you want. I mean, that's one of the advantages of having a 401k is you'll have a website which you'll see your funds. You can make changes basically on a daily basis, and you can tinker with it if you want. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but if you feel that you need that, you have to, then you can access it and make changes. There are also investments that you should be able to access. They are available in our program, where I call them do it for me. And those encompass a couple of different types of investments. One are risk-based funds, where instead of picking funds, let's say you determine I'm a moderate or I'm an aggressive investor, instead of picking funds and allocating them all yourself, and you're the one that has to rebalance them, there's a risk-based fund that's aggressive, and you just put that in there. You just put all your money in that, and then it's basically managed for you. Now, with a risk-based fund, let's just use that example. If somebody's a little younger and they're more aggressive, as time goes on, they're going to become more moderate, they're going to become more conservative. And so generally, you're going to have to do something proactively to adjust your risk parameters. So at some point down the line, you're going to be more conservative. So you have to actually move the money from the aggressive portfolio to the moderate portfolio, or from the moderate portfolio to the conservative portfolio. So anyway, it's just something, it's a do it for me, but you have to do a little bit of maintenance. The last one is a target date fund for the do it for me. So what a target date fund, it's designed to be a totally hands-off solution where it's based on your retirement age. So somebody retiring in, say, 2040, there's an allocation based on that retirement date. And what happens is that it's automatically adjusted. So unlike the conservative, moderate, aggressive, where you have to make the change, it automatically shifts the allocation. So 2040 initially is going to be more aggressive. The closer you get to 2040, then that portfolio proactively changes its allocations to be more conservative. So it's very much of all the funds that are typically available, that's going to be the most hands-off for most employers or most employees. Just as an aside, I'm not saying this is good or bad. I have my stuff in a target date fund just because I don't like to monkey with it. I do, I do this for a living, but it's something that I don't feel like I really want to be monitoring all this stuff all the time. So I like it because I don't want to have to do it, right? You might have somebody else that does it, that does a target date because they just don't get it, right? You get somebody that's never invested before. A lot of times a target date's a good option for them, at least initially, because then they don't have to have any understanding whatsoever. So it makes it real easy for them. But like I said, in my case, it's just because I don't want to monkey with it. Okay. Um, let's go back to that kind of why people are starting 401ks discussion. One of the big things that actually happened here over the last couple of years is that the government actually initiated a program where you, as business owners, receive very generous tax incentives to start a 401k program. So if you have an existing 401k plan, I'm sorry, these are not going to apply to you. But for those individuals who have not set up a plan or are thinking of setting up a plan, you have some very aggressive tax incentives that you're gonna be able to enjoy. Now, the way these work, there's two different types. One of which is what's called a startup credit. These last for 3 years. The idea of the startup credit is these are designed to help you offset any build expenses that you incur by setting up and having the plan. And once again, for 3 years. The way this works is that this is based on how many eligible non-owner employees that you have. You get 250 bucks for each of them, up to $5,000. The minimum, if you've got one employee, you're still going to get 500 bucks as a tax credit. If you've got one single employee, you're going to get $500. In addition to, and like I said, that's for 3 years. In addition to that, there is what's called an auto enroll tax credit. Now, the way the government has structured, starting in 2025, any new plan that's established has to be set up as what's called auto enroll. What that means is instead of you, the business owner, trying to talk your employees into getting into the plan, they're automatically enrolled at 3% of pay and they can opt out. If you have that feature in your plan, you get an additional $500. So, and by the way, it's mandated, so you're going to have it, so you're going to get at least 500 bucks for that. So if you even have one employee, you're going to get $1,000 to offset your plan costs if for having a new plan. And like I said, that's for 3 years. Now, in addition to that, as I mentioned before, as a business owner, you do not have to contribute to employee accounts if you do not want to. But if you do, there's a tax credit for that as well. That's a little different than the startup credit in that it lasts for 5 years, but then it also scales down. But the way the formula works is that as a business owner for years one and years two, you receive 100% of what you give employees up to $1,000. That's for year one and year two. Year three, you receive 75% of what you give employees up to 1,000. Year four, it's going to be 50% of what you give employees up to 1,000. Year five, it's going to be 25% of what you give to employees up to 1,000. And then the program would then sunset after year five. The main reason that they're doing this is that if you look statistically at what makes a plan successful or successful plans, more plans that have employer dollars contributed to them tend to be more successful. And what that means is you've got more of your employees that are going to be in a better position to retire. It encourages saving and encourages more dollars being put in by the employees and things like that if the employer contributes to them. Now, that said, once again, you're not required if you don't feel financially that you're not in a position to do it, or you just don't really want to do it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. But just FYI, if you don't have a plan and you want to set up something and you want to try to contribute, you are actually going to receive some relief from the government by doing that. Okay. Um, just so with respect to installing a plan, I mean, these are things, first off, that we would actually help you with here at Assure. we're gonna sit down with you and we're gonna help you determine who you want to be eligible for the plan. One of the nice things about having a 401k plan is that you can kind of design it specifically to you. It's not it's not a kind of necessarily a cookie cutter. You can certainly make it a cookie cutter if you want to, but if you want it to be customized to your business, we can structure the plan design with regard to who's eligible. What are the rules of it? What am I giving dollars to employees? What kind of dollars am I giving to employees if I'm doing that? We decide, we would have a discussion, we would determine, kind of what that is. As I mentioned before, I've spent a lot of time with businesses helping them try to customize a plan design based on their business goals, based on, what they're trying to do to attract employees, things like that. Plan onboarding, it- we would help with that with regard to enrollments. As I mentioned, you're going to have auto enroll. So enrollments, instead of in the past trying to talk people into getting into the plan and then have them having to continually defer, they're going to be in the plan. And it's really more a question of, hey, you want to stay in the plan because of this and that. Um, we're going to make sure that we have a payroll connection. What that means is that we're going to be integrated with our solution with the 401k. We have what's called full 360 integration. What that means is instead of you having to send your payroll file and then having to send a separate file to the 401k, the people that have 401ks are familiar with this. So if you're sending a payroll file, then you have to send a separate file to your 401k provider. With us, you would skip that step. So you'd send the payroll file, we would automatically fund the 401k for you. So you don't have to deal with contributions and things like that. We would take care of all of that for you. On the back end, when somebody makes a change, let's say they're going from 5 to 7% of pay, that's something typically, if you're not integrated on the back end, that the business owner or the employer needs to track and needs to reflect in the payroll file. The problem with that is if you miss somebody making a change, let's just say for the sake of argument, you miss somebody's contribution change and you don't catch it for 6 months and the market goes up, then you're responsible not only for the dollars that should have been deposited, but then in addition to that, you're going to be responsible for the growth in the portfolio. So with our program, when somebody makes a change, we're integrated on the back end. So when somebody makes that change from 5 to 7%, that is automatically reflected into the payroll file. And so from that perspective, you guys don't really have to do anything, from the processing of the plan. Plan administration. So one of our big differentiators that we bring to the market is that we sign on to the plan, and I apologize for the jargon here. We sign on to the plan as what is called a 316 fiduciary. What that means is that we take on administrative responsibilities of the plan. So typically, as a business owner, you're going to be responsible for things like tracking eligibility for your employees, making sure people are eligible or entered into the plan. You're going to be responsible for anything that goes to the employees. So any notifications or changes or anything like that that require notification, you're going to have to send those out to employees. Anything that goes out of the plan, whether that's a distribution or a loan or a hardship, you got to review and approve. In addition to that, there's an annual 5500 form that's a government reporting form for a 401k that you have to sign. Okay. All of those things that I just mentioned, if you screw something up in there, there's potential liability, right? If you screw up somebody's eligibility or whatever. We take all that on your behalf. So as the 316 administrator, we take those administrative functions off your plate, and then we take on the liability for the work that we do. So if there's a mistake that's made, it's our mistake, not your mistake. Now, that said, I don't want to make it sound like you don't have to do anything at all with the 401k plan. You still got to make sure that you, transfer your payroll file and that the information's accurate and things like that. But really, for the most part, we're going to be doing pretty much all of the heavy lifting. Like I said, including and up to and including signing that 5500. And so, like I said, we take on the liability for the administration of the plan. Okay, so taking money out. So there are options. I mentioned this here just a couple seconds ago, but taking money out of the plan, there's a number of different ways that participants can actually access funds in their plan. You can potentially set up what's called a loan feature where they're literally taking a loan from themselves. There are things where are called hardship withdrawals, where if they have a family emergency or something like that, and there's certain things that are kind of determined to be hardships. That's something we would determine, by the way. You don't have to do anything with this. but it's a way for employees to have access to their dollars in case of an emergency situation. And there's what is called in-service withdrawals. Typically, once you hit 59 and a half, those will kick in. And so people that want to start taking money out prior to retirement have the ability to do that. Generally, anytime anybody terminates employment, they can access those dollars. Typically it's in the form of a rollover, but you do get some people, if they got a small balance, they'll just take it and take the tax hit and any penalties that might apply. And that's something important to note too, that anybody taking dollars out prior to 59 and a half is going to be subject to a 10% penalty. So just FYI. Now that said, that doesn't apply to hardship withdrawals. Or loans, but an in-service withdrawal would be after 59 and a half. But if somebody from a terminated employment decides to take that money and they're under 59 and a half, then not only will they be taxed on it if it's pre-tax, but then they're going to have a 10% penalty. Okay. So I wanted to talk about a little bit. I've talked a little bit already about our solution. Our solution for the Texas Pest Control Association that we offer is what is called Guided K, and it's sponsored by My Firm Assure and Concurrent. And the way this works is that Assure is doing the actual 401k piece. So we are acting as the record keeping platform. So that's where you're sending the money to us. We have the website, we've got the participant service, things like that. We do all the processing, all of that. So we do that piece. And then in addition to do that, we do the administrative work. And as I mentioned, we do that administrative outsourcing where we take on the administrative functions of the plan. Our financial advisory partner, Concurrent, they handle the investment piece. They handle the participant education piece. So like when you have an enrollment meeting or things like that, that would be through our partner Concurrent. They would take on a fiduciary role with regard to the investments. They would be in charge of the investment platform. So they would sign on to as once again, I'm going to use some jargon here, but they would sign on as what is called a 338 fiduciary, which basically means you guys don't have to worry about what's going on with the funds. They're putting together the fund lineup. They're setting the process for selecting, monitoring, and potentially deselecting and replacing funds. That's all on them. You guys don't have to do anything in that capacity. And once again, they're taking on the fiduciary liability for that piece of the plan. Okay. Their background. So just to give you a little quick background on Assure, we've got over 100,000 business clients across the country, over 1 million individuals that are working with us, employees that we're paying on a week-to-week basis. We are a top 5 provider for payroll HR in the country. With regard to Concurrent, they are one of the largest retirement plan providers in the country from an advisory perspective. They work with a lot of Fortune 500 401k clients. They bring a dedicated advisory team to your businesses. Now, the advantage to that is that the service model that they have developed, which they work with Fortune 500 companies, basically a white glove service, they're going to be able to bring to the Texas Pest Control Association as well. So from that perspective, you're getting very much an outsourced white glove solution at a very competitive price. And we can talk, if you're interested in learning more about it, we can talk about cost and things like that. Last thing, this Concurrent at Work engagement app. This is something that is, I will tell you, I wish Paul Fahn is my counterpart. He wasn't able to make it today. Paul works with Concurrent, but this is some technology. This is an app that takes employee engagement literally to the next level in that we are able to incorporate, they're tied in with our payroll system. And so they're able to get access to things like what other benefits the employees have, that kind of thing. And we can customize a financial planning structure for each individual employee based on them. I'll go back to target dates. Target dates are kind of a one size fit all, right? So if somebody's retiring in 2040, you might have a different situation for each of those people. Somebody might make $200,000. Somebody might make $30,000. They've got different potential needs, right? So this is a solution that can customize down to the individual participant level with regard to education, with regard to engagement, and with regard to, how they want to plan, financially plan their future. So Paul would do a much better job of kind of explaining it, but just FYI, the advantage that you folks have at the Texas Pest Control Association is that you're bringing a state-of-the-art program that generally most Fortune 500 companies are going to have access to. We're bringing it to the small business level. Okay, so just kind of wrapping up here. Why 401k? Why guided K? On the 401k side, the advantage is that you're attracting and retaining really good employees. By having a 401k, you're generating a lot of employee goodwill. I mean, it makes you more of a desired employer based on the statistics that we were showing for people that are looking for quality employers. And bottom line, I mean, if you look at it, it's the right thing to do for your employees. I mean, helping them retire with dignity is something, unfortunately, I think the way our society is being structured, it's falling a lot on the business owner to actually, help their employees. But, if you can, it's the right thing to do, correct? So that's something that, I think you could be kind of proud of knowing that you're helping those employees, reach a dignified retirement. Lastly, guided K, the program is seamlessly integrated with the payroll system. So this solution that we talked about through Concurrent and Assure is integrated with the payroll 360. We bring that next generation experience for the participants, and we basically make it easy for you. I mean, like I said, I don't want to make it sound like you don't have to do anything, but we take on most of the, pretty much all of the heavy lifting, and it's very much, whether it's administrative or investment wise, we take on, it's very much a turnkey solution for you folks. So I want to thank you guys for taking the time. That's Paul's information, Paul with Concurrent. That's his phone number. You can see my information at the bottom there. I'm available at daniel.hoffman@assure.com. If there's anybody that has any questions or would like to talk further, I'm happy to chat with you. And actually, once again, that's my phone number. I'm going to stop my sharing.
So this is super interesting for me. We talked offline a little bit before we brought everybody in. There's a lot of obviously about 401ks that I didn't know, so I was excited for this talk. And Jamie, Claire, we can bring everybody on. You can bring Greg and Jennifer on as speakers now if you like, and then they can just jump in with anything they have. I think Jennifer and Greg, I think y'all will need to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask Dan.
Oh man, I
Thank
covered
you.
everything.
Yeah, that's right. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. This is Jen Howard. Hi, Jason. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Jamie Claire. And yeah, Dan, really, that was really helpful. Thank you for that information. It's interesting because I've always been more on the 401k side from the employee standpoint, not the employer, as I don't
Yeah.
have my own company. And so really it's just kind of nice to see it through that lens as well from the employer side. And I've, always been really grateful to have been with employers who have offered 401ks and nice ones for that matter, just really taking care of their employees. And yeah, it definitely makes a difference from an employee standpoint. I keep that in consideration, and I'm glad for it.
No, perfect. No, that's as I mentioned. I mean, I use my wife as an example with that, and it is something that is gonna. And by the way, it was interesting. Once she left, of course, what did they do? They set up a 401k plan.
Mm,
But it is something that it is become very much, for lack of a better term, table stakes for most quality individuals that you want to hire. They're looking for benefits, and this is something that is definitely a benefit. So
hmm Yeah, so Dan, I'm with PCO Insurance, and I specifically Dexter and Company out of Dallas. And we often get a lot of questions from on our side about health benefits, of which I usually can, yes, I have my EV license, but also can help with the market. I do get some questions too about retirement, 401k. Like that one kind of stops me a little bit because I just don't have a contact per se, or don't really know where to send folks. So really, Dan, I'm just glad to be connected to you because I'd like to just further connect and also be able to send some of my clients your way as well.
No, that would be great. I would love to. And maybe we can talk offline because with respect to our organization, as I mentioned, we have 100,000 business clients across the country. And, Paul, Fawn, and Concurrent, I mean, they work with, thousands and thousands of businesses as well. One of the areas that so if I understand correctly, you work more on the P&C side, is that correct? Not so much health, life and health?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I do have my life and health license. I definitely more on the PNC side for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is that, or the reason I mention that is that I personally, I don't have right now anybody on the PNC side. So I would actually like to talk a little bit more just because I think that there's some good synergy there with regard to the types of clients that you're talking to. Because as you mentioned, you're talking to them about the same stuff we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm gonna just put my email here, Dan, in the chat as well.
Perfect.
And you can just holler at me. So yeah, good stuff.
Okay. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing because I do want to continue this conversation. Uh,
Now the kicker, right, on your 401ks is to um check it sometimes, to manage it, yes, but
Yeah,
not
no,
too much.
exactly. But see, okay, so okay, I'll go back to what I just mentioned. So I have my stuff in a target date fund. I'm sorry, I'm trying to write and talk at the same time, and I'm
You're
really
fine.
bad at that.
Take your time.
Um, but you know, I look at it all the time.
Hmm.
I don't do anything with it, but I look at it all the time. So what I would say is, even if you're doing the target date where it's basically, um, where it's basically it's being done for you, you still want to monitor it, right? I
Sure.
mean, maybe once a year, just, I mean, just take a look at it, make sure that, and it could be a situation, and let's go back to myself. I've done this where it's like, okay, because and this is another thing too. These target date funds, they're all managed somewhat. Everybody has them now and they're all managed a little bit differently. And sometimes they need, for your target retirement date, what I've done is I've actually gone up about 5 years because I tend to be a little more aggressive. So instead of, the one that I'm in, I'm going up 5 years and being a little bit more aggressive. So that's something that you kind of would want to maybe evaluate on a year to year basis.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, for me,
As
I've got a
yeah,
raw, and I just forget about it. I literally don't look at it, and it's what happens this year is irrelevant. Like when we had the crash, it was probably scary to look at, but then it
Well,
was up 12% year over year.
yes,
It bounced
exactly.
back.
This year has been amazing. And it's like, don't get excited. This too shall pass, right? So it's like, it really is that long game of if it's bad, hold on. If it's good, hold on.
and it's interesting that you mentioned that because I mean, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for way too long. And there's statistic information. So I go back to that concept of do it for me or do it myself, right? If you look at the people that try to do it themselves, they have underperformed significantly what the market has done. And the main reason that happens is because they make emotional decisions when markets go down and go up, right? And so, there's, by having somebody else managing it for you, yeah, it's to me, it's just it makes it a little bit more. I apologize for the phrase idiot proof, where for you're making individual emotional decisions based on short-term events. And that's the thing. You make a long-term decision, make on a short-term event. And the problem is that I mean, people have proven, definitively that they cannot pick tops and bottoms. And so you're better off staying in and putting money in when it does go down because you're buying more when it goes down. It's called dollar cost averaging, the concept, if you've ever heard that before. And so, so it is something that, for me, if I've done employee education too, by the way, of all the things that I've done. And, that's been my message. Just, stick with something that you're comfortable with. Make sure you have an allocation that you're comfortable with. If you are doing it yourself, go back to that example I gave in the presentation. Let's say you're it's because it's easy math for me. I'll say 50-50. Maybe the market has a good year and you're 60-40, right? 60% stocks and 40% bonds. That tells me if you're supposed to be 50-50, you're more aggressive than you should be, and you need to rebalance that. And the advantage to that is that you want to buy high or sell high and buy low, right? What you're doing in that scenario is you're selling your stocks high, you're buying your bonds low, and you're bringing things back to 50-50. Now it's not all or nothing, but you're still doing that. And so from that perspective, you know, that serves individuals better, making sure that they stay with their allocation that they're comfortable with, because that's going to keep them from making rash decisions, right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, keep from making rash decisions. That's so true, right? That's just like, I feel like planning, risk management in general, right? Personally or professionally, having kind of a path forward and a roadmap is a, a good place to be for sure.
Yep. All right.
And the tax, the tax benefit now, and then, you've got something to look at later other than business growth, because God knows, right? So,
Yeah. And from a tax perspective, I mean, 401ks are one vehicle. There's a there there's a companion plan that I've worked with over the years called a cash balance plan. It's a type of a defined benefit plan. If you've got business owners that are really, if they're looking at, sometimes you run into people that are really successful and yeah, you can put 80 grand away. They want to do more than that. There is a companion plan where you can put away 2 to 5 times what you can put into a 401k plan. So if you ever run into that, that's something I can help with as well.
yep, very cool. I'm looking forward to continue this conversation, and it's going to be
Really
fantastic.
interesting. Good
This
stuff.